Annyeonghaseyo! Welcome to Afternoona Delight. We're Leah, Megan, and Amy, romance novelists and your K-romance guides. So grab some dekboki and listen to your new favorite unnies.
Hey, everybody.
Hello.
Hi there.
I was going to sing the song, but it doesn't make sense without a lead-in because today is May Day. And I was going to be like, it's gonna be May.
That was like exactly. But you've got to do it on April 30th. Like that's when the meme is the best, right? Yeah. But of course, when this is out there, it's going to be May.
I love that we just like raw dog into these episodes and I'm like, ooh, what's the funny thing I can start? And then I fumble it and then we have to talk about how we fumbled it. And then we can move on.
When you're not here, Amy and I can't get the like,
we don't know who to say, like who says hello right first. Like, yeah. We're lost without you, Leah. You're the glue. You're the glue that holds us together.
I must be so likable.
You are likable.
You're very likable.
You're very likable. So obviously we're talking about like likability today. You all see the title of the episode. Like it's I feel like we always talk about the episode like we're teasing it, like we're surprising it, but we forget that everybody just sees the title of the episode wherever they're listening. Yeah. So y'all know there are no surprises here as far as what the topic is for today. But I was in the middle of a book yesterday that I finished today, and I feel like this idea of likability, like I kind of manifested like a bigger conversation for it with this book that I'm reading. So the book that I just finished, it's called Hello Stranger by Katherine. She writes some fantastic contemporary romance, and I've really been digging her books lately. And she is also a K-drama fan. Like Gong Yoo got name dropped in this book. So if that's not enough for you to want to read it. But the premise of the book is actually really cool. So I'll just talk about it for a second, since we do give book recs every now and then. The main character, Sadie, has a lesion on her brain. She has to get some brain surgery to relieve the pressure, or she could have an aneurysm. And she gets the brain surgery and it goes well. And it's like normally like a 2 to 4 days in the hospital in your home, and you just recover. And she came through the surgery great, but because of the edema that was pressing on a certain part of her brain, she developed facial blindness. And her career, she was a portrait artist too. So like throw that in there. Katherine Center did a lot of research on the condition, and the way that it's described, like how she saw faces was basically like they were puzzle pieces, like nothing in the right place, and really interesting. Long story short is it's a romance novel, and it ends well, and it ends fantastically, and I loved it so much. But there's a long author's note at the end that I wasn't expecting, and I was listening to it in my car, so I just didn't turn it off because I was like, well, I'm driving, so I'm just going to keep listening. And the author's note is kind of like in defense of liking romance, and kind of talking about this likability of it and how she fell in love with romance. And how when she first started reading it, she would, like put duct tape over the chesty covers and stuff like that. God. So nobody would know what she was reading. And so it's a long author's note. I'm just going to like go over like a little part of it because it gets to the heart of why we like romance, but why a lot of us are afraid to say we like romance too, right? So it's the structure, that quote unquote predictable structure, that does it. Anticipating that you're heading toward a happy ending lets you relax and look forward to better things ahead. And there's a name for what you're feeling when you do that: hope. Sometimes I see people grasping for a better word than predictable to describe a romance. They'll say, it was predictable, but in a good way. I see what they're going for, but I'm not sure it needs pointing out that over the course of a love story, people fell in love. I mean, of course they did. I don't think it's possible to write a love story where the leads getting together at the end is a surprise. And even if it were, why would you want to? The anticipation, the blissful, delicious, oxytocin-laden, yearning-infused, building sense of anticipation is the point. It's the cocktail of emotions we all came there to feel. I propose we stop using the hopelessly negative word predictable to talk about love stories and start using anticipation, as in, this love story really created a fantastic feeling of anticipation. Structurally, thematically, psychologically, love stories create hope and then use it as fuel. Two people meet, and then, over the course of 300 pages, they move from alone to together, from closed to open, from judgy to understanding, from cruel to compassionate, from needy to fulfilled, from ignored to seen, from misunderstood to appreciated, from lost to found, predictably. That's not a mistake. That's a guarantee of the genre. Things will get better, and you, the reader, get to be there for it. It's a gift the love story gives you, but no type of story gets more eye rolls than love stories. They're so unrealistic, people say, as they start another zombie apocalypse movie. What is that? Is it self-protection, self-loathing, fear of vulnerability? Is it pretending we don't care so we aren't disappointed? Is it some sad, unexamined misogyny that we as a culture really, really need to work on? I think love stories are deeply misunderstood, in part, at least, because they don't work like other stories. Love stories don't have happy endings because their authors didn't know any better. They have happy endings because those endings let readers access a rare and precious kind of emotional bliss that you can only get from having something that matters to look forward to. Yes, misery is important, but joy is just as important. The ways we take care of each other matter just as much as the ways we let each other down. Light matters just as much as darkness. Play matters just as much as work. Kindness matters just as much as cruelty, and hope matters as much as despair. More so even, because tragedy is a given, but joy is a choice. Romantic fiction thrived during the pandemic, and there were lots of theories about why. People thought we were lonely, we needed escape, we wanted some laughs. All true. But I think, more than that, it's because love is a form of hope. And I won't go through the rest of it, but just
That's amazing.
Beautiful. Like,
and there's more. Like, yeah.
I was like hanging on your every word, which is very surprising for an author's note. And it also makes me want to buy all her books because that's incredible.
Yes.
I love it.
And if you want a good story that's got good comedy, good emotion, and great growth, I highly recommend. I've read 3 of her books so far. I've loved all 3 of them.
And can you say the name again, just because people are going to want to know?
Yeah. This is called Hello Stranger by Katherine Center. Yeah, I mean, it's available. I'm reading it right now from my library. So available to purchase, available to download, available everywhere you probably can get your books. And I did the audio, but the ebook was available too. So I'm like, I'm going to download that so that I can read the author's note to y'all. You know, that part about like likability and why some people are so anti-romance, either people who read it but hide that they read it, or people who turn their nose up at it and say it's not, you know, it's not real literature. Like at the beginning of the author's note, like she was a creative writing major. Like she had to basically like deprogram herself to the idea that romance was not legitimate. Right. And we've all been there before.
Same.
Mm-hmm. I had to do the same.
We've all been there before. I did too. And I think it's very interesting. And I think it plays into a lot of what we're talking about today is why is it so hard to admit that you like something?
I want to take this one step further because when I was listening to this, it made me have some reflection because I feel as if, again, okay, I'm going to bring gender up into it because I feel as if
that's what got me. That's why I read it.
I feel like women often so I feel like there's many reasons why I always defend romance with women readers and why I think it's important and why I feel like I get worried that things get denigrated that women like. But thinking about this, I know for a fact we have some men, not many, but some men that listen to this podcast and that they like K-dramas and they're watching K-dramas that have strong romantic elements in them or just straight love stories. And it just, I think for like maybe the first times, I'm just like sitting with this for a second to say, I'm looking across the aisle and I'm like, you know what? That's a brave act, I think.
Yeah, thank you.
And so I'm not trying to like, you know,
thank
say
you
that,
to the men.
yeah, like, and I know that the bar is low, blah, 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 but to be like, I think it's a radical act for a woman to say that they like romance for many reasons. I think it's a very difficult and also very radical act for a man to say that they would like to read romance or watch romance on TV. And honestly, if you do, personally, today, as I listened to this, I was like, I feel like it's a heroic act.
I completely agree.
Well, especially
so
if you
much
do
respect.
especially if you do it openly, because that is like, that's a tiny, I mean, it's a big gesture when you're the person who's doing it, but it is a small gesture that will make way for more gestures like that. You know what I mean? To just do it and do it openly.
And I think it's scary. So I don't want to be like, do it. And then have them be like, oh, now everyone like talks about me. But like thinking about what we like and just being able to have like that confidence to be like, I like it. Like it is so attractive. And I just, Yeah, so I just think it's something that I think that's another topic to get into at a later point, that I would like to think more about what it's like to be in these spaces and what it means to be with a masculine representation and be like, I like reading about love too, because I often think about like the uphill battle we face as like women who like love this genre, write in the genre, kind of like live in this genre. But I look across, I look over and I just think like, and I mean, and it's true, like we have lots of listeners, I'll be like, my husband will never watch X, Y, or Z. And it's just
My
like
son won't. I have a 15-year-old son who won't.
the
and
Matrix
I don't.
the Matrix starts early because they're told that this is not for them, when it's like there's no part of this that's not for you.
Right.
Right.
I mean,
But
yes, there's female gaze sometimes.
It's so learned, like so far, like outside of me, right? Like I'm here creating this, and of course, like watching it all the time. And he's always like welcome to be a part of it. But it's also, like it's accidental, the sort of exclusion as well, right? Because his sister and I love all of the same stuff. Like we watch Friends, we watch How I Met Your Mother, we watch New Girl, we love all that stuff, and they're funny shows that have romance that I know if he sat down and gave it a chance that he would find something funny in it. But I've never tried to force that on him. I just let him walk away. You know what I mean? Because I don't know, what do I do? Help me parent my son.
No, I mean, it's I can't. We have the same. I mean, I have both my kids in the car the other day, and I was just like, talking about like the book I have coming out in November, and we were talking about like cringe and like the concept of cringe and what it means to like call something cringe, because it's such an interesting way for me to feel like people like police what's okay or not okay.
Right.
In such like an uncomfortable way. And I've been trying to think about like, what does that mean for all these people who just like things, and then they're like, now I feel weird because that's cringe. And I've got two teens who are like, cringe is like the big thing, like that's like a power word right now, is like, you're cringe, that's cringe, the thing I like is cringe. And so then we like romance came up, and it was like, I am cringe as a human, which is fine, I'm their mother, and I'm a cringe person, but like what I do is cringy, my books are cringy. My daughter was like, we saw your book at the bookstore. My friends and I all looked at it and we all agreed it was cringy. And I was just like, and they're not trying to even be, it was just very matter of fact. Like she wasn't coming to cause me harm. Right. And it didn't cause me harm, except for the fact that I was like, wow.
You need to unlearn this.
Yeah. And it's so interesting to see where the learning happens, because it's not, I mean, clearly, look,
right.
I'm not like quiet about this in my household. So it doesn't matter how much I talk about it, how much I like celebrate it, how much I normalize it. Like they're getting affected by things that have nothing to do with me. Like my powers only go so far. And
your influence is massive at this age.
And what I think is interesting, just to kind of piggyback off of that, is like my son, who won't watch anything romance, who won't read anything romance, is very supportive of me writing romance, and like will talk to me about it, and like jokes around, like, are you world famous author AJ Pine? Like, say something. But like when the Christmas book came out and the Christmas book was doing well, like he would ask me every day, like, how many reviews? What are you at? Like, it was very sweet. It was very sweet. So I will give him that. He's not totally anti, but there is something instilled in him that he's like, that I'm happy for you, but that's not for me,
Fully.
So, yeah, I mean, and this will play into what we're talking about today, because it's like, what are we bringing to the table as far as our own, sort of mental, emotional baggage that makes us excuse behavior in one character, but not another, stuff like that. We'll talk about that.
So, yeah, let's get into it. We basically today, it's just kind of like a conversation on kind of a high level topic, which is likability in characters. And so we're just going to kind of like break it down, and we don't have like, we're not unpacking a specific drama. It's not as loose as an uncensored. So we kind of have some questions, and it's kind of, I think we just kind of like go through conversationally. The Patreon was asked their opinions too. I think they gave some really good feedback. So we'll get to some of their ideas as well. But just to start it off as just like a very general high level, this will be kind of like a K-drama and beyond. What are some of the most likable fictional characters of all time? What make them so universally appealing? And then also, like, are there any extremely popular characters you personally dislike? So I kind of did like a bunch of questions in one there.
Yeah, you did.
But just like to jump in with like what you feel like you want to talk about.
Yeah, well, I mean, one of the first things that came to mind that I feel like has universal appeal as Harry Potter.
Oh, this is interesting because I actually unpack it because I have a Harry Potter thing I wanted to talk about.
Okay, well, there's something kind of funny about it because like you and I both have delved into the Harry Potter fanfic
Yes.
arena as well, which I thought was very funny. So Harry Potter is, I think, a universally liked character. He's not my favorite character from
I was going to say he's actually the person I like when we say
the
is there someone
series.
popular that you don't like. I was going to use him.
Well, that's funny. Like he's not, I don't dislike him, but I did find it funny in both Manacled and Draco Malfoy and the Mortifying Ordeal of Falling in Love, which is more of a rom-com. Also very good. Like one of the best things I read this year so far. But Harry and Ron are like they're still good at what they do, but they're like, we just kind of happened into this. Like we're really not the greatest kind of thing. And I thought that was funny. But yeah, so I think it kind of goes into what you're saying as well. Like he is one that comes to mind, but he's not my favorite.
So yeah, for me, I'm going to say I tried to think of like a universal character that I think no one dislikes. I tried to come up with
no
that.
one.
I tried to. I'm sure, like, if you dislike this character, come at me. But I was like, what's a character nobody can dislike?
Inigo Montoya.
I mean, he's pretty amazing.
Okay,
So
who is
anyone from The Princess Bride?
I came up with R2D2. I was like, how do you dislike R2D2?
I mean, true.
Like R2D2 is just like a classic sidekick.
I mean,
or she. I don't really actually know if
right.
R2D2 is a they.
I would have to learn a new language to really know R2.
Yeah, I feel like R2 gets into enough back and forth with like conversation.
Oh,
sure. You know what R2's up to. I was just trying to think, and I was like, R2D2 but I was like, what is it? Because I feel like R2D2 has a point of view. I feel like they are, but it's like you're the sidekick that's there, always supportive. You do call out your like the main character when they're on their bullshit. You're funny. And I feel like those are all likable things, because I think
I agree. Like you can't say you don't like R2D2. Like something is deeply wrong with you if you're like that R2's an asshole.
I want someone to contact me and be like, actually, I hate
actually us about R2D2.
Yeah, please do.
That's a funny one.
Megan?
So I have one, and I feel like this is maybe more for people of like millennial and Gen X age. That would be universal.
Mm-hmm.
But I would say Jim Halpert from The Office.
Oh yeah. God, yes. That's a good one.
Honestly, tell me if you hated Jim, because I would be really curious why, because I think he is incredibly likable. And I think there's a lot of reasons for it. I think it's the acting of, oh my God, what's his name?
John
Krasinski.
Thank you. Literally, it just flew from my head. It's the acting of John Krasinski, and it's also the writing, like the writing of the character. He's the one who's relating to the audience way more. I mean, he has way more stares into the camera than I think any of the other characters. Did I say that he's from The Office? I feel like
you did.
Okay,
that was the very first thing you said.
Something really interesting with his character, though. I don't know if I don't want to I'm not going to this isn't actually. It's an interesting anecdote. I don't know if you know it or not, but it fits in here, which is, do you know at one point they were going to write in that he had an affair on Pam after she had her baby? They fought to be like, I mean, good call. Like, what a fucking shit that would have been.
That would have been.
They wanted to do the same thing with Chandler on Friends. They wanted him to cheat on Monica. And Matthew Perry said,
lazy drama rating. Like,
no one wants that.
Okay. Also, can I just point out something really interesting right now? Even though I said Harry Potter and he's not my favorite, and then I said Inigo Montoya, and maybe R2D2 is a guy. We all picked men.
Said all men.
We said men.
Well, R2D2 technically is not.
I know. So, but I have some more here, and this is for me. Like I also put anyone that Meg Ryan played in the early 90s in a rom-com. Like, give me Sally Albright, give me Annie from Sleepless in Seattle. I adore it. And it was the same thing for me with Julia Roberts. Those two could do no wrong for me in a rom-com, and I loved them. And even still, like if Julia, I mean, I watched the Julia Roberts and George Clooney rom-com. Again, I forget what the name is called. Where they are divorced parents going to like Bali for their daughter's wedding and rekindle their relationship.
I was gonna say, and I wasn't thinking of this character just because I was like, I should mention a female. I literally, this was
No, I
one of
had these written down, but
Yeah.
I was just liking the first ones we said were men.
right. My other one would be Katniss Everdeen from the Hunger
Oh,
Games.
interesting. You think she's likable?
I actually do. I
Well,
actually do
you
think
like
Katniss-
her, but do you think she's likable?
I guess I do. I do.
I think you saved that for you think
Yeah.
she's like, because I was like, I feel like she is a unlikable character that you like.
Oh, maybe she is then.
I
You
mean,
know,
I
maybe-
do like her. I
Yeah.
do like her.
Yeah, I mean, I liked her because, see, this is the thing. I thought Katniss was coded male,
Kind of,
coded
yeah.
very male.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
And
and
this is-
so I think that, like, she made decisions that felt like just male coded. I don't know how to explain it, and I'm trying not to be binary, like so binary about this, but Hunger Games came out a long time ago, so that's always. I guess she's not like charming. Does that make you know what I mean? But
Yeah.
I still liked her.
So the Hunger Games is fresh for me because I came home late on Friday night and my daughter was on the couch in the dark. She's 13, sobbing. And I was like, oh my gosh, what's the matter? What happened? And she was
Rude.
like, I just finished the Hunger Games, book 3 or
Oh,
whatever.
Oh,
book
Mockingjay.
four.
shit!
And
I didn't like book.
I'm not going to get into like the spoilers, but she did not like how Katniss behaved at the very end and like the epilogue. And
Okay,
how
I will be-
Katniss,
I
like,
agree.
behaves with like the world. And she was like, she felt betrayed. She was sobbing in bed.
Wow.
And then we actually had a very interesting conversation that ties back into my earlier point where I was like, well, this is a beautiful moment for you to realize this is why fan fiction exists. So you can write what you feel like you would like to see happen. It's cathartic, it's fun, it's imaginative. And then she was like, that's cringe.
Oh my
See,
God.
As a fan of kind of anything of like literature shows, I change canon in my head. So for me, book 3 didn't happen. Let me just say that. Book Mockingjay, that was the 3rd book, right?
Mm-hmm.
Did not happen. I didn't like the entire book of Mockingjay. So to me, it just didn't happen. Like, or it happened in a much easier way and everyone lived happily ever after. I'm like that with Game of Thrones too. Like there are certain things that just in my mind didn't happen. I refuse to believe they happened, so they just didn't happen. So, and I know that's not okay. Well, it's okay. I can interpret art.
You can feel however you want about it.
Yeah, I can feel however. But
Absolutely.
anyway, so I do actually understand because I remember feeling weird about Katniss at the end of Mockingjay, but then I was like, she's not like that. I'm just gonna pretend she's not.
That's not how you would have written her, and so it's fine.
No, it's not how I would have written her. So I'm like, that's not the way it happened.
So I'm going to just round off my last likable because again, this ties into like some other things we've talked about in the podcast in recent times, mainly that Amy's daughter was amazing in The Sound of Music.
Oh.
I'm going to go with Julie Andrews as Sister Maria in Sound of Music. That is a likable character.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Like
Oh my
you
God.
just cannot not like Sister Maria.
Yeah.
How
No,
do you
I
solve a
agree.
problem like Maria? You don't.
You
just love her.
don't. You don't.
Mm-hmm.
And
let her-
Julie Andrews is honestly just a likable person. Like Julie Andrews is a likable actress, like Princess
Right.
Diana.
What have you seen her in that you haven't liked the character?
Even when
Like,
she's kind of a bitch in Mary Poppins, because Mary Poppins is kind of like a little bit of a stone cold bitch. It's still Julie Andrews, and she plays
because
it
she
so
knows
well.
what she's doing.
Yeah, and she's just kind of like there's times where she's short tempered. I'm like, yeah, you're a professional nanny. Godspeed. I would be too. These kids are brats.
They were.
They're entitled little brats. So yeah, but I think like again, like what makes that like why would I say like someone like Sister Maria is like a very universally liked character? It's that like plucky indestructibility that like whatever you throw at them, they're gonna find a way to come through it. And there's times when you're like, how are you gonna come through it? You're like a nun who isn't really a very good nun, and like you've got this like mega hot widow who's got like kink fetishes in the house. And then there's the I don't know. I'm sorry. I'm getting like now.
Like, why? Why? My daughter was just in this and you're turning it dirty.
Why are you doing this?
You know, he brings that whistle in and is like,
Okay, can I say one K-drama
Yeah.
character
yeah,
that
because
I
I've got
think
one too that I want to
is
do.
extremely likable, and that's Pak Min-young in Healer. And we've talked
Yeah,
about
that was
her
100%.
before.
That's 100% who I was going to say.
And honestly, we mentioned this in a like recent podcast. We were like, she is the most perfectly likable character. Oh, when
Yep.
we were talking about
Her
Marry My
roles.
Husband.
Yeah, we're talking
Yeah,
about
we're talking about
her favorite role. Yeah, our favorite role of hers, and how we can't
just
like
so-
nothing can top that role of hers.
She's just so likable.
She is so
Everything she
likable.
does is selfless. She's a good daughter. She's a good girlfriend.
She's a good
watching
reporter. Like she'll do anything for anyone.
She's
like,
so brave. She's funny. She can dance and sing. Like everything about her is perfect. And I love that about her.
So I thought about it for K-drama too. And I was like, who? And I think it's funny who I landed on. It's not who I expected. So I like kind of like sat there in my mind castle and was like, who comes up for me as the most likable person? And the person that came up for me was Cha Ji-won from Flower of Evil.
love her.
Oh,
Because
I
I'm like,
love
here's
her.
somebody who's just fucking like, again, like in maybe a little bit less, like there's somebody who like fought for everything she had for her family.
Yeah.
Yep.
And like had integrity the entire time
Yes.
in like a man's world. And I just,
She was good at her job.
Yeah.
She was good to her family.
She was a great mom, a great wife. She was awesome.
yeah, I want her to be my wife. Like,
I want her to be my wife too.
Seriously.
She was incredible. You're right. That's a really good choice. And so I think sometimes we don't talk about her enough when we talk about Flower of Evil, just
Mhm.
because Lee Joon-gi takes all of our energy in that, but his role wouldn't have been as amazing if it wasn't.
And I
No,
think
they
what it
were
is that-
they were paired very well together.
And what I like about it is that she, I think, because it's like you start to like, we're going to get into like some of the values that drive likability and stuff too, which I think is fascinating. But for me, I think what resonates is she's like very competent. So you get like the competent porn of her just being good at stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But she also is placed in kind of like unfathomably hard situations. And she's always looking to think outside the box and see things as they really are, not as she's being told that they are. And I always like that in like just human beings in general. It's a trait I like don't take everything at face value, kind of question things, kind of look at things. I just always appreciate when someone comes to me and has like a new way to present it. So like when she starts to hear the stuff about her husband and is like, there's like part of her that's like, I'm not sure, this feels very plausible. But then there's part of her that's like also like,
Trust.
even though there's
trust.
trust, and I've used my intuition and my human eyeballs to also be like, some of this doesn't add up. And so there's a lot there that I liked. And then I just felt like she never like squandered her moral sense of self. And I think that's, even when it's hard, she was still willing to like take a hard stance, even if it was going to be like, because she had a good sense of self.
Mm-hmm.
So what are some traits or qualities that make a fictional character unlikable for you?
You know, I was thinking today, because I think there's a difference between a character who I just don't care about and then a character who I think is actively unlikable.
Mm-hmm.
Because there are some characters where I'm like, oh, I didn't like them. And I'm like, well, did I not like them or was I just bored with them? And I didn't care what happened
Yeah.
to them. Because there's a difference, which I'm probably going to make some people mad, but I guess I like to do that.
Oh God, no, don't do it. I know what you're going to do.
Vincenzo.
Oh, okay.
I'm not talking about my mister.
I thought you were coming for my mister again.
No, I'm not. No, I'm done. I'm done.
Okay.
Done coming for my mister. Don't yell at me. I watched 4 episodes of Vincenzo. And I was like, I'm going to talk about him on the podcast tonight when we talk about unlikable characters.
Mhm.
And then I realized I wasn't even interested in him enough to find him unlikable.
That was me with Descendants of the Sun. I think
mean,
I think it's
I think it's him.
I think it's him. I'm sorry for the fans. Like he just doesn't do it for me.
After 4, like, I understand people are like, you got to keep watching. I am sorry. But if I'm watching 4 full episodes of a K-drama and you still haven't even given me a reason to care what happens to him, and I think he got hit by a truck in like the 3rd episode, and I still didn't really care because I was like, all right, I mean, what does it even matter? I don't know his goals, I don't know his motivations, I don't know anything by 4 episodes, so I just like dropped it because I'm like, I don't care if the character's unlikable. I can still care what happens to an unlikable character. Does that, you know what I'm saying?
Yes.
If there's like a really good villain, I hate him, but I
think
care what happens to him.
I think a villain is different though, because you're supposed to
True.
not quote unquote like them. Like I'm thinking of, and like I can't help it. I will always bring up personal taste because it was such like a big disappointment for me to go to a drama, like as I was trying to watch everything Lee Min-ho. And I think one of the things that I really didn't like about his character is because he's supposed to be the hero, right? So that's already like it's a strike against you if you're the hero and you don't do anything that seems very heroic in the story. And his character for me had no growth. And so if I don't see somebody have some sort of emotional growth by the end, like the character who's supposed to be the sort of villain, which was the ex-boyfriend, he had growth at the end and I liked him. It was a very strange situation. So to me, growth is a big part of it. Like that makes you unlikable to me if you just stay flat the whole time.
Right.
But then what about like, I think, you're making this all like a smarter conversation. So I'm just going to go more like baseline with
Oh,
where I
that's
think my
fine.
brain
Make
was,
it base. Yeah.
which is like, what happens if there's a character who's unlikable, but like that's their point? Like their point is to be unlikable.
But that's different. That's what I'm saying. Like there's some characters we're supposed to not like, and
yeah. So what makes so I think that's where I was thinking of like traits of like what makes someone
okay. So you're not
unlikable. Oh no, I mean I think it's interesting. Just take it any which way you want. For me, that's where my brain was going. Are like who are characters I find unlikable, and I mean like, but also like deserve to be unlikable because sometimes I think we just have like baddies in a thing, and it's like, well, yeah, they're unlikable. They're the baddie, but it's like somebody who's like memorably unlikable.
So like a Mr. Collins from Pride and Prejudice.
Yeah, I mean. So one, I don't want to get
somebody who just annoys me. That makes them unlikable.
So an actor who I think is a sweet potato, delightful, adorable person is Park Sung-hoon. I thought in Into the Ring, he was an amazing love interest. I thought he did such a good job. In The Glory, he was an amazing baddie, I thought. Mm-hmm. And we're not going to get into spoilers because I have not finished.
Queen of Tears.
He has not finished. Yeah. But Queen of Tears, he is the baddie in Queen of Tears. And I think
with no mullet, which is making it hard for me because he looks so good being bad.
Well, yeah. So my issue is with this, and I'm just going to throw it out. And I am on episode 12. So I could have a very large role reversal with where I go. He's a baddie in this. Like, there's no doubt. He is a baddie doing baddie things. Like, it's not a mystery that he's a baddie. Like, we know he's a baddie from like jump.
Yeah.
I still kind of want to hit it. And I think that means it's a good unlikable character where I'm like, you are a baddie. You're
like Ano Ju. Ano Ju.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, he's a baddie, but he's like a dirty baddie. If you're a dirty baddie, then like you're unlikable, but it's like, oh, I want to hate myself tomorrow, and that's fun.
I was gonna say, I guess when I think of unlikable, I'm thinking of characters that I don't like because I'm bringing something to the table, kind of thing. Like, well, where like people say like, you've written an unlikable heroine or something like that.
Yeah. So I think my point is with, this like seminal character now that's in Queen of Tears is I feel like I can see where decisions come up for him and he gets a choice. And like we were just talking about, like, our favorite MILF from Flower of Evil, when things come up, she's making very ethical choices that kind of have like she's like serving her interests, but there is like a sense of like altruism and like this is like just the good morally thing to do. It's interesting when somebody makes the choices that like, you're like, these are all just very bad choices. But I enjoy when someone's unlikable because you can like see how they're connecting the dots, even if it's like fucked. It's almost like you're sitting in like the Trump administration back in the olden days and like saw Stephen Miller writing in his journal. And you're just like, oh, I hate it. I hate everything about you. You're a bad person.
Or you see him in a bar in DC.
We did see him in real life, and that was wild to see. Like the banality of evil was a very like powerful thing to be like, you're just like this little Gargamel. And you've done so many bad things, and here you are just like sniveling around this bar. Like that was a wild thing to be like, that's just like it really was the banality of evil.
Right.
And so, yeah, I guess talking about the banality of evil, that's what makes an interesting, unlikable character for me when I feel like they're believably bad, not like the dad in My Demon who was unlikable because just let him fucking die. Like,
but like just dumb. Like I don't want you on the screen.
Yeah. But I like it when I'm like, ooh, I see you have had hard things happen in your life. Much like, I can't remember his name, but An Bo-hyun's character in Itaewon Class. You've had hard, terrible things happen to you, and you could have reacted with your best self, and you did not. But it's sympathetic to me because
he's a good unlikable character.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think that's where I'm going at with the like Queen of Tears too. Is like,
okay,
it's good how unlikable they are because it like checks out in my head of like, oh, I can see what you were up against. you made the worst decisions possible. And I kind of feel bad for you, but I hate you and I'm going to be happy when you fail.
I mean, you need a good unlikable character to bounce the likable characters off of. Like, I think the best dramas obviously have the best mix of likable and unlikable characters.
And then they've got like the gray characters who are kind of like bad but good. Like I'm just thinking of the mom in, I don't know why this is a thing coming up for me. The mom in Crash Landing on You of who's our second lead?
Yoon Suri? Oh,
So Dan.
So
Dan's mom.
I think she's a good, like, great, where she's not just crushing good thing, but she's also not bad. She's kind of like,
she's a product of her environment.
We understand her motivation.
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah. Like she loves her daughter and she will do right by her daughter, not like by crushing other people, but
At their expense.
right at their expense.
Yeah.
That's a good one. I like that one.
Okay, so what about a fictional character that you found unlikable at first, but you grew to appreciate over time, like over the course of the drama?
Yeah. So I want to talk about this one because I thought of a character right away when I saw the question. And it's interesting that you just mentioned An Bo-hyun from Itaewon Class, because I think he plays dynamic characters very well. And by dynamic, I mean you feel much differently about him at the beginning of a drama than you do at the end. I think he's really good at playing roles like that. And a lot of his roles are pretty dynamic like that. And I don't think he gets enough credit for it because he posts a lot of thirst traps on Instagram. He's always has his shirt off in dramas. And I'm like, I know that I'm partially to blame for sexualizing that man, but he also is a fantastic actor. But anyway, he played that role in Military Prosecutor Doberman. So he is a horrible person in the first or second episode of Military Prosecutor Doberman. He is accepting bribes, screwing over enlisted servicemen, not giving a single shit because he's just getting money and showing off fancy watches, his car. He's even confronted by someone who's like, I think it's like, my son took his life because of you, because you didn't help him. An Bo-hyun's like, why are you like up in my grill? Like, I got places to be, sir. Like, he's just total dick. And I'm like, how are they gonna like? And I'm watching this because I'm like, I love An Bo-hyun, but holy crap, it was a terrible character. And then they really take him on a journey where he has to go from pretty evil to a character who decides to change his ways and fight for justice. And there's a clear path to his growth. He's helped along.
That's one of the things I love the most. Yeah. That
yeah,
kind
I
of
mean,
growth.
and I mean, there's the script takes the time to actually like have him sit down with the female lead. And he's like, this is the way I was. I don't like it anymore. What can I do to like be better? And she's like, I will help you. And I love it. I love it. And he does it in Flex X Cop too. So I only watched like the first few episodes of Flex X Cop, but I know where it's going. Like, I mean, it's very evident where it's going. It's kind of almost a very similar character, kind of this like charming, cocky asshole who like learns how to be a better person. And he just plays that role really, really well. And I think Military Prosecutor Doberman was even a little risky in making the main character so shitty in episode 1, but shitty enough that you wanted, like, he was so bad that you wanted to keep watching to see him kind of like get a comeuppance. You're like, how is he going to change? And you understood he was motivated by money. So you're like, well, what else can he be motivated by? And it was just a really, really, I just think not a lot of people talk about that drama, but I really enjoyed it. And it was a really good growth.
I like that.
Yeah.
How about you, Amy?
So I was thinking, and we've talked about this before, about the early couple of episodes of Coffee Prince and Love of My Life, Gong Yu's character, Choi Han-kyul. And I did not like him in episodes 1 and 2. And both of us were like,
Almost
are we going to need to quit this drama? Like,
yeah.
I can take like a Chable who doesn't want to do his job and who doesn't want, to do the blind dates and get married. But when he resorted to hiring who he thought was a young man to play his pretend gay lover to turn off all of his dates, I was like, oh, I don't think I can do this. And we gave it a chance to turn itself around, and it did. And thank God, because I was like, you can't do this to me after Goblin. Like, you know, I'm going back to watch like what is supposed to be like his classic drama and that everybody loves. And what am I watching? And get past the first 2 episodes and you'll be okay. But yeah, that was a character that at first I was like, nope, nope, nope. And then I loved him.
So I'm going to be a bit of a, I do what I want. I'm going to pick an entire drama, like the entire cast.
Sure.
Okay.
I'm going to say Mr. Sunshine. These were not good people. Like at the beginning, Mr. Sunshine himself was basically like, fuck Joseon. Like, I'm coming back here as an American soldier, but like, fuck this place. This place fucked me.
Yeah.
We have, you know, our, you know, amazing samurai who's also basically like, fuck the system. Like, it fucked me up and now I just like slash people. We had like, even like Kudo Hina, who had the hotel, was basically like, I'm out to get mine. The majority, I mean, Kim Tae-ri as like, you know, Go Ashin, like, I guess the most likable of all of them, but still she was kind of just like wealthy. And like, then we had my other favorite, Byung Yo-han's character, Kim Hee-sung, who was like her fiance, who was like the wealthy playboy who was kind of out of touch. Like, nobody starts this in a particularly likable way.
No.
Like, everyone's kind of a dick.
Yeah.
And by the end, you're just like cheering for all of them. And I feel like that's interesting because they have growth, but it's not like they've all become just like these, like, they're still kind of unlikable. It's just that you've seen them like make all these good choices while still kind of being unlikable, to the point that you're kind of like, I do like you and I am rooting for you. And it's one of my, I mean, it's probably my favorite drama. But I think it's interesting to be like, at the beginning, I don't think any of them are presented as particularly great. And by the end, you're just like, oh my God, you're all amazing.
Yeah, that's a good
example. The drama ends up giving us such great goals and motivations for every single character.
And there's a lot of selflessness, but I mean, I think it still played true. Like, I never felt like there were choices that were made that felt just like fundamentally cheesy for this. I mean, look, there's cheesiness in the drama, don't get me wrong, but I feel like there's like never elements that, like, I feel like whenever they had a choice to do the right thing and it really, really mattered, they took it even when it was really hard. And it would be interesting to see why they would grapple with that hard choice. And then sometimes they did it, like when it didn't matter as much and like it wasn't going to like change the trajectory of the world. There were times when they were petty and still made their choices in pettiness. And that's kind of what like rounded it out. So they were still just not like, it wasn't like all of a sudden they became like Captain Americas. They still kind of were like in their like small-mindedness, but they were acting larger than life. And that's always kind of reassuring, especially in these dark times, because it's like most people I think are kind of like, we're all kind of a hot mess. We're all kind of like petty little, like, you know, bags of garbage sometimes. But I would like to think that like for the most part, when it really matters, enough of us will step up and reach out with like our best higher selves. And that's the thing that gives me a lot of hope, is that, you know, especially when you turn on the news now and you're just like, oh God, how many of us are going to be able to reach within ourselves and look for the best in what we can be.
I also wanted to mention the heroine from My Dearest, because she is also pretty unlikable. The hero is too. But I think the hero has a little bit more charm at the beginning that makes you intrigued, whereas the heroine, I was almost like
O'Hara. She's basically Scarlett O'Hara. If you
wanted, it was hard. Like, or it wasn't hard. I immediately though wanted to know what was going to happen to her. Like, even though she was unlikable, I was like, I'm on this journey with her. I want to see what happens. I kind of wanted to see her fall at the beginning. I wanted to see her fall from her pampered life a little bit, which of course she did in spades. And then I wanted to root for her once kind of her true character was able to shine through, once like all her, you know, wealth and privilege was kind of stripped away. Then you got to see who she really was. But she was definitely an unlikable character. But in the end, though, she was likable. So the same thing. She went through a major journey, but I always think it's risky to start out anything with a heroine who is unlikable. That's rough. That's hard to do.
So I posed a question to the Patreon, and any of you can answer it too, but I just thought it would be fun to hear from them too. So the question I posed to the Patreon was, what drama character did you find unlikable at first, but grew to appreciate or like over time? and what changed your opinion of them?
Oh, I forgot about this one. Okay, so Sarah mentions this. Sarah from Afternoona asks, Oh Jung Se's character in When the Camellia Blooms. I totally forgot about
Oh
him.
my gosh, that's a good one.
He won the Beck thing for that role. She says he starts off so sleazeball, but by the end, we hope for a redemptive arc for him. He's so well written and played by Oh Jung Se. Even when he was the pits at the start, he was still such a screen stealer. I totally forgot about that.
Yeah, that was an amazing. As soon as I saw that, I was like, oh my gosh, that is amazing. Okay, I'm going to pick out one because we haven't talked about this one on the pod. So I'm going to call out one from Becky. And Becky said the most dramatic example that she can think of is that she liked and was rooting for Choi Woo-shik's character in A Killer's Paradox, which is a drama I still keep meaning to see, and I haven't watched it yet. So as far as she knows, she said, I don't have much in common with a serial killer, and I have no real pressing need to bridge that gap, but I was rooting for him as a human all the way through.
So Katie M, she is one of the reasons this is the topic. She really posed this discussion. And so she has some terms, or she has some comments that I think are really interesting. She says likability in terms of who we as individual viewers vibe with, admire, and or feel affectionate toward, and why. I see a lot of agreement in these comments that likability does not require perfection or goodness, and often a character's flaws, especially flaws that are explained through backstory or that I relate to, or share, gets me to like them more. And she says, like Moon Soo from Just Between Lovers. And absolutely, I mean, I think seeing vulnerability in characters, then we feel a kinship to them. We feel like, oh, they opened up to us, like the audience. You know what I mean? So yeah, I mean, I completely agree. I don't need a perfect, I know we talk about Park Min Young from Healer. She's very likable, but she's not. We shouldn't say she's perfect because she's not. She's not perfect, but she is incredibly likable. And I think it's just because, well, we talked about why. She's brave and she's good at what she does and she's so kind. There's just a lot of those types of reasons.
I'm gonna read this one. This is from Lynn Marie. I will once again bring my ultimate face to the table. It's okay to not be okay, and Alchemy of Souls. Yes. Moon Young and It's Okay is kind of a horrible person. She makes children cry, as a children's book author too, is ready to stab the guy who interrupts her book reading and makes selfish choices everywhere she goes. But I love her so much, primarily because I really enjoy female leads who are unapologetic about their existence. It's kind of therapeutic and a reminder to be bold in my own life. Her redemption arc is about learning to be vulnerable and letting others also take up space. She has to learn she's not the monster her mother taught her to be. Oh, that's amazing. Like, perfect. That is why we love Moon Young.
Yeah, I mean, we should have mentioned Ko Moon Young already, although, God, we have, an entire podcast devoted to her pretty much.
Yes.
But yeah, Ko Moon Young is a very classic, unlikable character, but then, God, I liked her.
Right. Right.
Sometimes you get in the weeds about this question, and then I'm like, well, wait a minute. Now I'm starting to get confused. I'm like, but are they unlikable? You asked about Katniss. You're like, yeah, I liked her. Well, and I think that's the thing. We're all going to feel differently and maybe find a character unlikable that other people love.
So can I read her next one just because it's funny and I like it too? And it's from Alchemy of Souls, which is another one of my absolute faves. Alchemy of Souls is a large cast of characters. So pick somebody and they will probably have a moral/value that I don't agree with. For example, Master Lee values celibacy, but is also one of the most likable characters in the show. The story wouldn't be what it is without a bunch of really flawed people making shitty choices. That's the case for a lot of stories. They wouldn't be half as entertaining if they weren't making disastrous mistakes left and right. But that one's funny. Don't value celibacy like he does, but he is a great character.
So there's a couple, I'm just going to pull from a few just really quickly because it's kind of a similar thing. So Sandrine makes this point that says that, she thinks that she kind of loves morally gray or even meanish characters because she feels that she is completely the opposite in real life. And so I thought that was an interesting point because Dinah also said, I too dream of alternate universes where I'm less good girl and more badass. And K-dramas give me characters to love whom I can aspire to be a little bit more like Yomi Ron in Love to Hate You.
Yeah.
And then
It's wish fulfillment. I love it.
Mhm,
Like,
mhm.
absolutely.
And then this leads into, I think, which could like bring us into like a bridge to kind of something we wanted to get into. I know, Amy, which was Katie M kind of came back to the idea that likability is a tremendously gendered concept.
Yeah.
And was like, I was raised to be a quote nice girl, and that'll do a number on you, as lots of us know, which seems like that's why I kind of like echoed some of these other people that were like, look, I kind of like these people that are just very much not like, I feel like I am the nice girl. I kind of like seeing people not be. And I think that becomes an interesting thing in a gendered way to say you're nice. And I read something, I put this in the book that I'm writing. So I'm sorry, this is a plug, but I just, if anyone ever writes it and then listens to this, they're gonna be like, wait, you talk about this in your book, because I have like a soapbox. But it was like, what's the difference between nice and kind? Kind means you're doing something for someone else. Nice in some ways means that you're doing something for yourself because you want people to like you. So like, I'm going to be nice in this situation because I want people to like me. It's actually like an inherently selfish act, whereas kindness is a more altruistic act. And so I think it's interesting that there's this like focus that like so many of us are indoctrinated on, and like being a nice girl. But like the idea of niceness is actually like very little is nice in niceness.
And I always think everyone's mad at me. I want people to like me. And it's so funny because sometimes I'll read emails that my husband has written, like to coworkers, or I'll hear him on the phone. And like, I could never. He never couches what he says. He never says too many unnecessary words. He's never like, well, I guess, I just wanted to bring up. He's just like, this is a mistake. And he doesn't, and I always type with like exclamation points because I'm like, I want them to know I'm not mad. My husband he has probably never typed an exclamation point in his life. And I'm like, why? Like, and that's the thing, that like gendered roles of likability.
Make sure, like, we're trying to make ourselves more likable.
Yeah. And like, why? Because like Neil he doesn't give a shit if anyone likes him. So maybe that's why. But also, if I wrote my emails like that, I think people would be like, well, she's a bitch. Whereas
Absolutely.
them and they're
That's
like,
the double standard. That's the double standard of it. Yeah.
Stand-up guy. But let me say this. When it comes to like gendered likability, that is something that I have been working on like my entire life. And I've sometimes, if I watch a drama or I read a book and a female character, I find her quote unlikable, I sit with myself a little bit and I unpack why. I'm like, why do I find her unlikable? What is it about her that I find unlikable? And a lot of times it's because she's often is not overly emotional in a way that I am. So I have a hard time relating to that. Or she's selfish at the beginning. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, I give An Bo-hyun that grace to be a total asshole. So why am I not giving the same grace to a female character?
Yep.
So that is something that I have really had to sit with. And it has changed my reading and viewing experience for the better in sitting and unpacking with myself. Why?
It made me like the same exact point in going through the questions for tonight, like made me think of when I first watched Boys Over Flowers. And we talk about all the time, like how Gu Junbyo is a problematic hero, but we love him anyway. Like we forgive him for asking, John Dee to lick the ice cream off of his shoe. And, we think it's okay and we forgive him, we give him that grace. But then I remember myself getting annoyed at John Dee, the main character, who one of the very first things she does in the drama is saves a kid from committing suicide. And I get annoyed that she eats angrily, that she's always angry.
Yeah. And you're
right?
like,
why? Because if I ate like that, like, and I think that is the internalized misogyny that we're brought up with in this patriarchal world. Because I think about it from the point of view of me, like, would I do that? No. Why wouldn't I do that? And it's because of the way that I would be perceived. And so I am projecting that onto her when she has every right to be angry and bite that rice off her spoon in an angry way if she wants to.
Yeah.
So I think the idea of like sitting with ourselves in our dislike of characters who we would forgive a male character of doing the same thing.
And I even talked about that in our My Mister podcast, I'm pretty sure. And I'm saying this to be positive, because I found IU's character to be unlikable. And I'm like, wait a minute, why do I find her unlikable?
Right.
I find her unlikable. And what I did is I was like, let's pretend there's like, because she was young, wasn't she, like 19? The
Yeah, she was
character,
a kid.
yeah, she was basically a kid. And so first of all, I'm like, Megan, get your shit together. She's a child, basically. And then also put a 19-year-old boy in there in that role. How would I feel about him? And I was like, oh my God, my heart would be pounding for him. And it really did change the way I viewed that drama, because I know it was not my favorite drama, but I then understood IU. I liked IU, or her character. But I really did have to sit with myself and kind of like the misogyny I was feeling towards her. And it made me uncomfortable that I had to do that with myself, because I kind of was like, I don't like her. And then but I didn't like that about myself, that's how I felt. So sometimes even like kind of reversing the role, like I'm like, how would I feel about this character if he was a man or something like that? Sometimes that helps me put myself into place a little bit, and
It's a deprogramming that you have to do.
Yeah,
because it's just kind of ingrained.
Yeah, because I want to speak about that, because I like when we're talking about internalized misogyny, what are we speaking about? I think it's also nice to be clear on that.
Sure.
And so I would say like it doesn't really refer to this like outright belief in the fact that like women are less, like that women are inferior. I would say it's much more so like, and there are women that think that. There's women, like there's a whole, you can go on tradwives.com and like watch like bazillions of like alarming TikToks where women are like, I am, biblically subservient to my man. Like that's not like what we're talking about. Like that's pretty uninternalized. That's just out there. But the internalized,
we're talking about like, we don't consider ourselves misogynists, but we have this sort of programming that we were brought up with as women.
Yeah. So I would say that
the patriarchy,
it causes women to, I kind of wrote it down, but it causes women to shame, doubt, and undervalue themselves. And it shows up even if you're a self-identified feminist. Absolutely. It shows up even if you're socially conscious. It's the unlearned, like absorbing of the programming that happens. And it can start to be like, for example, the first place to look if you're like, I don't know about this, is to think how you view yourself, because I think it's easier to think what are the scripts that you say to yourself before even looking at anyone else. Like if you ever have a negative statement that you're making about your weight, about your appearance, about your capabilities, if you talk to someone and you were a little too aggressive, all of that stuff is like, that should be like the ping to be like, and so it's not a knock. It's just to say that like, since you live in a situation of essential, like continuous oppression, even if it feels like, you're making your way, like often there's like, you might have a seat for a woman at the table or two seats. And I mean, this is changing again, like as we go through generational changes, but like you go back to folks who, but it's still not fast enough, first and foremost. So there plenty of, executive boardrooms you go into and there's not a lot of female representation, but you can go back even like another generation before where really it would be like even less known, and the kind of cutthroat fighting that you have to even get a seat at the table, to be the person that gets to have the thing, to be the person that gets to have like the music career or the anything to take seriously. Like we've already got a woman there who does that role. Like the woman we already have our woman. And so, that happens. And that happens for people in like, I mean, we can unpack this with like racism, all sorts of things, but it's just in this case, we're talking about misogyny and internalized misogyny and how you can basically just start to like, so I think it's like, if you start to be like, ooh, I don't think I have that, or I don't know what that is, just like, to me, the idea is like, first start by thinking, what do you tell yourself on a regular basis? And notice when you're unkind to yourself, a lot of those unkind things come from internalized misogyny.
Yeah, and for me, and probably for some other women too, I think it manifests in how like I view other women. So I'll think, oh, that woman is definitely trying to rise above her station, which sounds so 1950s, because it's like, oh, well, who does she think she is? And it's like, well,
it's looking down on other women, and
it's looking down,
Well, it's just so like if you received an email from a woman written like your husband, you would have been like, she's a bitch.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's internalized that we want to make sure everybody likes us before we say the bad thing we have to say. If it's, you know, if it's something like semi-negative, like if I'm asking you to do something for me, why do I follow it up with, if you can't, no worries,
Almost
all
every
the
time.
time? That
No
is
biggie.
internalized. That's my internalized misogyny. Don't worry if you can't. I'm so sorry for asking. Does a man ever say, I'm so sorry to ask you this, but no, like we tiptoe and please and thank you, like around everything. And that's part of it. That's part of it. So
And
yeah,
I'm not sure I can stop. Like I will
I
probably
know.
keep doing
So
it.
if anybody's listening and is feeling called out because we're bringing up internalized misogyny, we're not calling anybody out. Like this is something that we all have to unlearn.
Oh yeah. And
Bit
yeah,
by
what
bit.
you were saying was like the things of like, what do you say sorry for, or what do you hear other women say sorry for? Like, I am sorry for saying no. I'm like, oh God, no is a huge one. How you
I'm sorry, but I can't.
yes, and how you react to someone telling you no or you saying no. Oof, there's so much that happens there. And sometimes somebody will say no, and I'll be like, I'll get that sense, because often I don't get the sense of like, who do they think they are? But when I see someone say no to something, and I'm like, how did you get to say no? I had that happen at work recently where somebody was basically like, I'm at capacity. I'm going to have to leave this thing that we're doing. And I was like, I'm at capacity too. Why am I like, I don't want to be at this thing and I still have to be here to do it. And it was like, who do you think you are that you get to leave? I'm like, and then I have to be like a person who's setting healthy boundaries and knows themselves. But my first thought was like, that's not like, and it didn't come from just like, that's not fair from group work, because that's a whole other thing. It was more like, how did you, yeah. And something else that happened really interesting was in a meeting recently where because I work in higher ed with students, some students were in a space and they told a man who was in charge of the meeting, they sat down and they said, we're going to record this meeting because we want to share it out. So we're going to put it on camera. And he said, no, I absolutely don't consent to that. He's like, we have notes that we're taking here. You can report back everything you say, but I don't consent to being on camera and being filmed. So no, you will not film me. And I was thinking, if they brought out the camera and if I didn't want to be filmed, I'd be like, oh, I know. It was like, oh my gosh, it was just so amazing to see him just be like, no, absolutely not. And I was just like, and like, didn't
be like,
explain.
you can do that?
Yeah, and didn't even explain. Was just like, he was like, no, I'm sorry, I don't feel. It was just like, no, you will not.
Yeah, there was no sorry.
And I had I was like, I don't understand that. Like, I don't understand how you do that. And I feel like I'm a fairly like
The power.
Yes, just to be like, no, absolutely no, you won't.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't think I could do it even like if it happened right now. I'd be like, okay, film me, feel my shame.
I mean, I guess. Okay.
And then you wouldn't talk because you're like, I don't want to say anything bad.
Yeah. Oh God, it was just so
I'd be like,
amazing.
does my hair look okay?
Yeah, imagine living this life where you walk into a room and say, no, I won't do that. I was just
Imagine a
I
life where
don't
you can
consent
set
to
healthy,
that.
where you can set healthy boundaries for yourself. Imagine that life.
I want to live in that world.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, so I think it's just like, and I mean, like, it's just, it crosses the border from everything. It's like women who are a stay-at-home mom, a woman who wears lots of makeup, a woman who goes to the gym a lot, a woman who prioritizes her career. It just never ends. It just never ends. And like, not everything's going to be a trigger to you. And when I'm saying you, it's like the listener, but also myself. Like, we have our individual triggers too.
Yeah.
Like, look at a character like Yoon Suri in Crash Landing on You, right? Who is, you know, kicking ass right and left, building her own business. Like, she doesn't even want to take over her father's business, you know, who wants to leave it to her. So rule out even, you know, the siblings who are out to get her because they just want the money. Because there's always a fight for who's going to be the inheritor of the Chable family. But then everybody who she works with and who works for her sees her as unlikable because she's powerful. Like, she's not overtly mean to people. She just expects people to do things because it's their job. And if it was a man, nobody would think twice about it. But everybody, you know, talks about her behind her back and, you know, thinks that she's a bitch. And we don't see her. Here's what's interesting. And here's what shows you that a woman wrote this drama and is probably unpacking her own, you know, internalized misogyny, is when does Suri get close to the people she works with? Is when she starts to smile more and socialize more and sort of bend to their expectations of what a quote unquote nice person is. And I'm only like now kind of like unpacking that as we talk about this because
So
I love that drama.
So I want you to think about that while you watch Queen of Tears, who is written by the same writer as Crush
I know.
on You.
I know.
To
Which I
see
think is
how so it's definitely
growth.
It's growth, and it's a thought provoking to see, because there are trope flips in this drama of like there's a lot of trope flipping that happens in this drama.
Yes.
And so I do think like we're going to cover this drama at a later date, don't worry. But I do think, yeah, as you continue to watch it and using that lens that you just talked about with Crush Land and You, it is interesting to see where like I like when you see writers who are grappling with like core ideas and like what their core stories are that they think about in life. And so I think you can see Queen of Tears as like a pretty fascinating extension of that.
That's a good point.
Mhm.
Same writer.
I do like this question, which did kind of ask the Patreon, but it's, can a character be likable if their beliefs or actions fundamentally clash with your own values? Is it possible to appreciate a well-written character whose worldview you don't relate to? And so that I do find, I like this question, especially when it applies to K-dramas, because there have been times, specifically when it applies, I think, to like Confucian ideals, that I get so frustrated with characters. And I know that's like my worldview, judging them unfairly, but it is hard for me sometimes to really relate to characters when their values are so much different than mine. I would say, though, I still care, but sometimes I can get frustrated, if that makes sense. I think a lot of it has to do with the like respect your elders and do what your parents tell you, and like a lot of that I sometimes struggle with in K-dramas.
Because we don't behave that way.
Yeah,
this
fuck the
came up-
parents. No, I'm just kidding. I love my parents.
So I
No,
want
but
to
I
give
know it's different though. It's different.
So I want to give a plug to, because by the time this drama comes out, Something in the Rain came out today, which is a drama that I think is interesting. And I enjoyed my conversation when we did this pod, because the mother that's in Something in the Rain, I found to be a very unlikable character in a not a fun way. Like I really just did not like this character at all. And I just like would get very frustrated with her. And I thought Sarah unpacked it from K-Drama This and Afternoona Asks in a really smart and observant way that, again, like you do have to like kind of like realize where are you watching things with your cultural bias lens on.
Yeah.
And to be like, yeah, some of these choices are not good choices, but this is all like this mom is basically grounded in very, very Confucian ideals. These are women that I grew up knowing that I would have called aunties. These are values that like were held. And so you may like or dislike them, just like she would like or dislike them, and say, yes, they're not like, you know, not always like the healthiest or the best choices that you're making when you're coming to like how you view your family and status and, you know, your positionality in the world. But she was like, this is coming from a very clear cultural POV. And I think that becomes, because I think that's, yeah, something to sit and kind of grapple and reflect on too, because in the drama, the mom isn't being asked, like the writer and like I don't think the drama's ever saying just like her. She's fine. It's good. But like, I do think that like some of the extra, like, you know, when it would just be like, like I'm so mad. And like, why could this like not be resolved with a conversation? Because that can be like a critique in a drama, like, or not a drama or drama, but like a book too. Like, you know, it's not great conflict if you could just have a conversation very easily and solve it all. But then you put in like these layers of things where like, yeah, you would you really talk back to your mom about this? Would you stand up to your parent about this? Like what?
Yeah.
And so all of a sudden it's like, okay, what I'm critiquing is almost like, you know, lazy writing that could be solved with a conversation. I'm missing a very big cultural aspect of this. And I need to kind of like take a seat too in like my analyzation of it.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And even if like I would say, even if I understand it, sometimes I still find myself frustrated. And so that can affect my enjoyment of the drama, because it's hard for me to like get over that like frustration. And that's one reason I didn't watch that drama, because I was like, I know that's going to drive me crazy. But I do. And I try to see some, you know, if a character has a rain phobia, or a zip tie phobia.
Try to understand that.
I try to understand it and take it very seriously and respect them for, you know, their trauma.
But I will say that my worldview is never dropping a kid off at an orphanage in the middle of the night.
Never. Or letting your daughter think she didn't have a brother.
Never.
Yeah, well, fair. There's, I
ever
mean, I
over
think
it.
that was just meant to be,
I'm
We're
just saying
joking.
though, there
We're
are
joking.
no. But what I'm
I do
laughing
have
about
lines
is
that
when again, writing, it is funny for me having had such a long break to come back into writing after, like probably 4 years of really not actively writing under my pen name and having this like very large K-drama influence, I think, to like my sensibility and my tastes. And now like having to sometimes be like, wait, no, you can't just have something happen because it like fits in like a K-drama. Like, yeah, like there's some things where I have to be like, I am writing a Western book, like in a Western audience. I have to have there be some grounding here. It can't just be like, surprise, surprise, you had a brother and we just kept it a secret and we're going to resolve it in a second. Like if you put that in a book here and you got called out, I would not think that that's an unfair critique. And if I tried to get away with like that level of egregiousness and someone called it out, I'd be like, fair point, fair point. Like if I shoved that in like the final resolution, like
fair.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, we knew, like you just blocked it out and repressed it and we
let you forget.
So that we could have the surprise twist at the 11th hour. And if people were like, wait a second, like it shocks me that they didn't put in any, I mean, they could have had like a little dappled bit of mystery. I feel like it's almost something they pulled out of their ass at the last minute. Like,
I think they did. Don't get me started.
Yeah. Cause I feel like you would just like foreshadow a little bit of it. Like there was no reason not to foreshadow a tiny bit.
It's like this happy fangirl culture drama. And then they throw in crazy stuff at the end. We're talking about her private life, but anyway, I also like this character or this question that you wrote, Leah, because I have to think about this myself sometimes. Is disliking a popular character a sign of being contrarian, or can it reflect legitimate criticism of their characterization? Because sometimes I worry. I don't want to be contrary to be contrary. But I would say when it comes to K-dramas, if like our readers are like clamoring for us to watch something. They're like, you're going to love it.
Our listeners, you mean?
Oh, I said readers. Yeah, our listeners. If they're like, oh my God, this is the best drama. You have to watch it. You're going to love it. I don't want to dislike it. I actively want to love it and be as excited as they are. So that's why if I don't like it, I'm super disappointed. And I know that you guys are like, Megan's probably not you guys, like you two. I mean, some listeners might be like, Megan just didn't like my mister to be contrarian. I swear that's not true.
You weren't alone in that. It wasn't like I wasn't loving on the drama either.
Yeah.
Like some things just don't hit.
Yeah. And
the way other people get hit,
Right. But I actively want to, and I don't like being contrary. I actually do not enjoy it.
No,
I enjoy it. I enjoy the discussion then.
Yeah.
But it's not like, but I want to have a joyful watching experience.
Yeah, disliking something just to be contrary, that says more about you than about what you're disliking.
Oh, absolutely.
And I feel like that kind of like brings it full circle to the romance discussion, is there are people who have never read a romance book in their life, but will do a whole TED Talk on why romance sucks because they just want to be that person who doesn't like the thing. So I think opinions are absolutely valid, whether it's liking or disliking, but I do think you have to back it up with support. You need to support your thesis with evidence and analysis and turn it into a 5-paragraph essay.
You need notes.
Yeah. I want notes. I want a PowerPoint. I want there to be good transitions in your PowerPoint.
Mm-hmm.
Don't just throw that shit together.
And wait, I need to say this because it's haunting. It's just a thing I will always say. If somebody ever is like, comes at fan fiction and is like, what is this book? Or like, I wish there was like an equivalent with K-drama, but like, is this like Wattpad, AO3, blah, blah, blah. Like if you're going to come from that place of like critique, immediately in my head, I am thinking, oh, you're just not like the other girls, are you? Like, I just immediately am like, I am hearing it because it's just like, what? Like, and so, yeah, like when you were talking about like the hatred of romance or like the making fun of romance and it's so easy, it's like the lack of curiosity of a space that is inherently so fun So I just feel like, again, I just always want to validate fan fiction readers. And I've only grown in my love for fan fiction. And lately, like I've had more people sending me fan fiction stuff. And it makes me really happy because I've just gotten to where I'm like, I think it's good for me and my growth too. Cause I don't know if I ever like thought about Wattpad or those spaces enough to be like highly critical. But I think if you ever would have asked me like 10 years ago, I think I would have just answered from like a dickish place. Like, I don't think I would have been my best self. I don't think I had like a simmering like contempt, but I just think I would have been like, meh. Whereas now I'm like, no, no, no. I think this is like good for so many reasons. Like to the point I would love to even like if I had time and I could like get my like PhD and like fan fiction like research, I think it's a fascinating space.
Absolutely. It is. And I think that was one of the things. I don't think that I had an outward disdain, but I never sought it out. And it was, I mean, you know, say what you will about book talk, but it was book talk that got me to check out Manacled. And I'm like, because I'm like, I just need to know. Like it was FOMO. I'm like, I need to know. You know, and so I read it and then I was like, oh, good God, my whole life needs to be Hermione now because that's the best thing to come out of Harry Potter is the Draco and Hermione fan fiction. And I'm telling you, like Draco Malfoy and the mortifying ordeal of being in love on AO3, go find it, is one of the best romances that I have read this year.
Oh, that's so cool.
And it's the part of me, like, you know, before I read Manacled, I was like a little bit hesitant because I was like, I've never read fanfic before. Why have I never read fanfic before? And, you know, how do I feel going into it? And it was a weird sort of situation because I think I had that sort of internal bias that I didn't know that I had until I went to it. And I was like, I did it like I partner read with my daughter and it was fun to like go into it together. And then as I'm reading it and realizing this is some of the best writing that I have, you know, ever read. And this person is brilliant. And of course they are because now they have a book deal and I'm super excited about that. Senlin Yu. So really excited for that. You know, we always say we don't want to yuck anybody else's yum, but the people who are out there yucking yums who've never tasted the yum before, you have no right.
So maybe to close it out, because I think we need to close it out, is what, but I would like to bring it back bookish because we haven't done bookish in a while. And I
like bringing it bookish.
And we have not done a book rec in a minute. Okay, so how about a book rec with an unlikable character? I think that's easy, that we like. I can go first unless somebody has one like ready to go, because I have one ready to go.
Go ahead.
Because I want to talk about it, because it's fucking filthy. So I'm going to bring in that first. Anything else you do will be highbrow compared to what I am going to get into. So this is a book that my editor recommended to me last week. We were having a conversation and she was like, I'm reading this book and I think you would really like it. And of course, I'm like, tell me more. I like to know what people think I would like. And she was like, this is a Peter Pan reimagining where a character that plays like a Wendy, like basically a legacy Wendy, like 4 generations down from the original Wendy, just gets fucking railed by Lost Boys. Just railed, nonstop railing. Just why choose Lost Boy? Why choose erotic sex? And I was like, yeah, I'm going to get this book this very second. So the book is called The Never King. I want to see if I can show the cover because they're very compelling covers. Like they're very dark covers. I'm showing the covers are like these skulls. And so there's a series. So The Never King is the first one. I would say everyone's kind of an asshole in it. Like no one's really good.
I heard I have not read these, but I heard they are filthy.
Oh, but like also I am a very desensitized person. I'm like filthy, right. Sure, but like is it that filthy? Like I was like, it could be way filthier. But like I think if you haven't done much filthy, it's gonna be like wildly filthy. If you've like been around some filth, I think it's like just a lot of it.
Okay.
But I mean, I so far haven't seen anyone bust out like a big move that I'm like, wait a second, like what happened here? But I would just say that like Peter Pan's not okay. So the thing is none of them are super good. Peter Pan's lost his shadow, which is a kind of magic that he possesses that lets him like be out during the daytime. There's like other magical things with it. He and the Lost Boys are all like tattooed, ripped savages that just want to like do nothing but fuck. And then Wendy has like a bunch of abandonment and love, needing love in all the wrong places issues. So she's just been having like, and using sex as power, and like, how can she get through the world as like a young woman? Well, she can like have sex and like learn to manipulate people that way. So also not very likable. You put them all together and all they do is just gangbang each other. Compelling, I would say it's book crack is what it is. It's straight up book crack. The author is Nikki St. Croix. I think overall, I'm not going to get into my critique or my anything else of the book. I'm just going to say it is unlikable characters, filthy gangbanging. Why choose? And it's on Kindle Unlimited.
Of course.
The
it is,
Never
yeah.
King kicks it off. Nikki St. Croix.
Okay, so I've got two. One, I'm gonna say for as far as like popular literature, You by Caroline Kepnes.
I love this book so much. I love it so much.
So You by Caroline Kepnes, which is now a series on Netflix, which I haven't watched. So here's the funny thing about the book. So I listened to it on audio. So if you don't know about You is very interesting. It's told from the point of view of Joe, our quote unquote protagonist, I guess. It's his book, it's his story. And he talks about the woman that he's stalking in the second person, you this, you that. And that's, that's why it's called You. And he is not a good human. He does some very bad things throughout the entire book, but you follow him on this journey and you want to. And I did the audiobook of this, and the audiobook is narrated by Santino Fontana, who is the voice of Hans in Frozen. And he was on Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, and I love him and I love his voice, but now he will only ever be Joe to me, which is so hard. But yeah, I mean, like, it is a very compelling read, and I've only read the first book, but like, I could not stop listening to this book, and it's, yeah, like more book crack. Then another one, I'm going to go back a little bit to a little bit of the classics, and I'm going to toss out Wuthering Heights, because I have forever loved Wuthering Heights. And there is nobody redeemable in Wuthering Heights. Heathcliff and Kathy are the worst.
They're horrific.
And
It's
I love
amazing.
them.
I do too.
So I actually just read this duet by Jessie Walker. So the first book, it's a gay romance. So the first book is called Where There's a Will, and the second book is called If There's a Way. So this this duet was the most angsty thing I have read in a long time. Like, I'm talking like throwback to like the new adult angst. Okay, like everything that can go wrong goes wrong. Like every time like something good happens, like a wrench gets thrown in and these poor boys are like torn apart again. But you start out with one of the characters is decently likable. His name's Will. And then there's Wei, who is not very likable. And when they were 10 or 11, they lived in the same town and they had a fight. And Will moved away. And he comes back when he's like an adult. He's like early 20s. And Wei is so mean. Mean, rude. I don't trust you. He's like almost semi-violent. He's dependent on alcohol. Like he's a mess of a person. And he's so not nice. Like he treats women terribly. He's only really good to his friends. And that's pretty much the only redeeming thing about him. But you find out why. His motivations become clear, and then all of a sudden he is a little gem that you want to protect and polish because he's been through hell. And that's why he's so incredibly unlikable on the outside, because he's trying to protect a very, very damaged, mushy center.
This reminds me vaguely of Kisike.
Yeah. This is like beyond angsty. Like you have no idea. And if you have any triggers, you should read the trigger warnings, because there's abuse mentioned and things like that. But it is very good. The writing is excellent. I could not stop reading. And this was when Amy checked in on me, because I was
right.
I was
She was
either
missing for 2 days.
I was either writing my own book that I would need to finish, or I was reading this duet, because the books are long. But they are, oh my God, like chef's kiss angst, truly. The two, like the romance of them in the end is stellar. They talk about therapy like therapy is like exalted in this book. They don't magically heal each other with their dicks. Like there is therapy they both need to go through. Leah's like,
as much as we love magic dicks, like we want some therapy too.
Anyway, it was honestly a duet that had me by the throat for like a good 2-3 days because I read it nonstop. So I do recommend it. And there's a lot of characters in there you're not really sure if you're supposed to like or not. It's kind of a full cast. So I do check it out. It's by Jessie Walker. And the first book is called Where There's a Will. And the series is Lost Boys.
Seriously?
Lost Boys. Yeah, it is actually.
We're on a real theme here.
They mention a little bit that they like name themselves after the Lost Boys of Peter Pan, but that's like where the Peter Pan stuff ends. Like there's no more references to it. They're in a band. Though. They're in a band called the Lost Boys.
All right.
And that's it.
That was a big show.
Yeah, that was fun though.
Yeah. I like when we just kind of talk.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a lot of, I mean, I know it's a podcast and we talk, but I mean, we went off.
But like, yeah, I mean, like we aren't like, I mean, like I love deep diving dramas, but I like when we just get to kind of like riff on a subject.
Yeah, just chat.
Me too.
Yeah. All right. Well, we hope you enjoyed it and we'll be back next week.
Yeah. Go out and be kind and not nice and say no to someone.
Without apologizing.
Without apologizing.
Don't say you're sorry. Don't say no worries.
Mm-hmm. And then let us know what you did in the comments on Instagram.
Yeah, let's all do it. Let's all do it with something.
Set some sort of boundaries this week and put yourself first.
Yay. All right. Till next time.
Annyeong.
Kamsahamnida. Thank you for listening to Afternoona Delight. Where can you find us outside the pod? Head on over to afternoonadelight.com. That's AFTERNOONADELIGHT.com. You'll find links to all our social media, our book recs, K-pop and K-skincare recs, and if you want even more Afternoona Delight, because really who doesn't, you can join our Patreon, where you can choose the patron level that's right for you. Join in daily K-drama conversations, listen to bonus podcast episodes just for patrons, and participate in our monthly live K-drama support group via Zoom. We can't wait for you to be a part of the community. Until next time, annyeong!